Hello everyone, welcome back to the Human Reviews channel, and today we are listening to Pink Moon by Nick Drake. I know nothing about this album. I don't think I've heard a single song off of this album besides maybe the title track, and even then I don't know if I've heard that. This is one of the very few times that I'm going into an album absolutely blind. Like, I know literally nothing going in. This album is 11 tracks, 28 minutes, which is interesting. Like, this thing is very short. There's lots of 1 minute, 2 minute songs. The longest song on here is only just under 4 minutes. So I'm very interested to see what the pacing of this album is going to be like, what the flow of it's going to be like, considering how short the vast majority of it is. I think this is a folk album, from what I saw, which is interesting. I've not really covered much folk on this channel, which is kind of a blind spot in my music listening in general, and something I want to dive into a bit more. So I'm, excited about that. And yeah, with that being said, I think I'm just gonna get straight into this. No need to waste any time. Let's just get straight in. Track 1, Pink Moon.
Pink moon, gonna get you on the pink moon. None of you stand so tall.
Huh. Song was delightful. That was just a very upbeat, cute way to start the album off. The song was just super pretty. It had a absolutely gorgeous sounding acoustic guitar going throughout the track. Like, the way it's recorded sounds absolutely fantastic. The sound of this is so full and so rich, which is very impressive for like a folk album from the 70s. Nick Drake's vocals are so soothing. Like, that he gives just such a chill vocal performance here that it's so endearing and captivating, but also at the same time it's so chill. Like, I feel like I want this guy to sing me to sleep, you know what I'm saying? And then also you have like stuff like the piano being added in there to add some extra nice texture to the track as well, and adds a little bit of variety. That was a very nice way to start the album off. I think I'd give that like a 9.3. That was just an incredibly pretty way to begin this album, and I'm very excited to see where this goes from here. Next track, Place to Be.
When I was young, younger than before, and I will more or less see you face to face.
The lyrical content is very interesting. The lyrics seem to be more trying to set you in the environments of these individual songs. That seems to be the purpose that the lyrics serve, which is very interesting. And I think it's doing a great job of it. Like, with the first song, and this song as well, with this one literally sounding exactly like being sat on like a grassy hill just looking out at like the sunset or something, and then having the lyrics sort of echo that is really, really sweet.
When I was strong in the sun, I thought I'd see when day was done.
Yeah, that was just another very pretty track. This album is benefiting a lot from its simplicity. It is doing so much with so little right now. Like, the first track was just acoustic guitar, piano, and the vocals. And this track is basically just the same. I don't even think this track had any piano in it. I think it was just acoustic guitar and vocals. And it's benefiting a lot from that because it's able to focus more on like painting very simplistic but vivid pictures rather than trying to have lots of moving parts, which I think is perfect for this style of folk music. That song, the thing that stood out to me the most was like the chord progression of that song. I thought it was absolutely stunning. Now, my music theory knowledge is kind of terrible, so I can't tell you what exactly the chord progression is, but I know that it was absolutely stunning. It really took me by surprise just how engaged I was in that, and seeing how that progress throughout the track. And I'm sort of at a loss for words for this with this album right now, because it's just so simple but so effective in its simplicity. Like, there isn't a lot for me to talk about, but it's so effective in the fact that it's not doing a lot, you know what I'm saying? So it's leaving me with not a lot to talk about, but still leaving me incredibly impressed. I think I like that song, like, arguably even more than the first one. That's like a 9.5. That was amazing. Next up we have Road.
You can say the sun is shining if you really want to. I can see the moon and it seems so clear. I can take a road that'll see me through.
I am going to say my first minor issue with this album, and that is that that song was too short. I actually completely disagree with everything I say in this section. I think that the runtime of this song is perfect, and this has grown to be my absolute favorite of the first three. I knew going into this, the 28-minute runtime, I was interested. I saw a lot of these shorter track runtimes, and a little bit of what I was worried about seems like it's going to be the case here, and it's that the track just sort of feels like it should have been a little bit longer. It was a very pretty statement. The song itself, it was surprisingly catchy. The trying to find something that will see me through, I think that's what he said there. Very catchy. It's probably gonna get stuck in my head, but I wish there was a little bit more of the song itself, because I feel like maybe it could have been just a little bit more fleshed out. Maybe it could have been just, I don't know, a little bit more explored, I suppose. But still, the song itself, it's gorgeous. Like, I'm just absolutely in love with the general aesthetic of this album, in terms of the recording style, in terms of the pictures that the album is trying to paint through the instrumentals. I am just loving it so far, and I feel like on a casual listen of the album, I don't think I would mind the track lengths quite as much. For that reason, the song is still going to get, I think, a flat 9. That has increased to a 9.7. Song is incredible. I'm off center. I'm still a little bit off center, but it doesn't matter. Alright, it's a bit better. Next up we have Which Will.
Which will you go for if you won't take me? Dumb now.
I'm gonna be honest, that song was my least favorite so far. Not by a lot, but I do think it was probably the least impactful moment on the album for me up to this point. I also completely disagree with this. This song has grown to be like my favorite song on the album, full stop, and I don't really know why it didn't click with me on a first listen. I don't know. On a re-listen, it grew a bunch though. Despite the fact that the lyrical content on that track is very clear, I feel like it's just the hardest one to see what the bigger picture is. With the other songs, it was very blatant what the tracks were trying to set up. It was very obvious what the tracks were trying to make you see, and they did such a good job of it. But I feel like this song doesn't quite do that as well as the other ones. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip over the rest of this section because I completely disagree with literally everything I say here. I feel like the song actually does the best job of that on the entire album, and I don't get why I thought it did the worst job, because I feel like this song paints the most vivid picture out of any song on here, and it is the most obvious to see what it's trying to show you, and it puts it across in the most effective way out of any track on the album up to this point, on top of having incredible writing, fantastic themes that tie into the album in such an interesting way, and also just a fantastic progression of the sound of the album up to this point. Yeah, this song is a 10. Easily my favorite on the album, like, as a whole. I don't know why I didn't mess with it as much on a first listen. Next up we have Things Behind the Sun. Oh, sorry, Horn. I misread which track it was. Pretty interlude, but I don't know how necessary it was to be here. I don't know. It's nice to have here, but I it just sort of feels like a kind of a break in the pacing of the album to me. It sounded sweet. It was a fine enough little interlude, but I do feel like it is sort of unnecessary to have in here. So I think I'd give it like a high 7, like a 7.7, 7.8, something like that. I definitely wouldn't skip it when returning to the album, but it's definitely not one that I would return to like casually like any of the other songs up to this point, you know? Next up, Things Behind the Sun.
Please beware of them that stare, they'll only smile to see why.
You know, I'm actually gonna get Genius up and try and figure out this song. The lyrical content here actually does seem. Let me go back and try and read these lyrics first. Yeah, we're gonna have to look at this one on Genius, I think. It draws up some ominous imagery behind the shining orb of light. What kind of darkness exists? Is it the moon? Is it something more sinister? And even if one knew what actually lay behind the sun, who would listen? One of the biggest problems for me with this song on a re-listen is actually the lyrics, as I feel like this song is very lyrically unfocused. It feels like it's bouncing around a lot of different things and not tying them together in the best way possible, and it does sort of bring the song down for me a tiny bit, but not by much.
Just what you are beneath a star that came to say one rainy day.
Whoa. Yeah, great switch up indeed.
Open up a broken cup with goodly sin, sunshine in.
Yeah, I think that was the best combination of all of the best things on the album up to this point. Incredible lyrical content, fantastic scene environment building with the instrumental, my favorite vocal performance from Nick Drake up to this point, as well as some of the most beautiful imagery on the album so far. The message is this is a mid-AF album, yeah. I disagree. That song is my favorite so far, absolutely. It really is a combination of all of the best things this album has to offer up to this point. That one is like a high 9, honestly bordering on a 10. That was amazing. Yeah, that song has shrunk for me to a 9.3. It's still an incredible track. It's still a fantastic piece of the album. It's just on a re-listen I noticed some lyrical inconsistencies that bug me a little bit, and it brings it down just a tiny bit for me. Next track, No.
You know that I love you.
I'm kind of agreeing with you so far. I am not crazy on this riff that's going throughout this song. I also don't really like the vocals up to this point in this track, like the humming over the beginning and even like the way he's singing over this part here. There's something about this song that just feels a little unsatisfying and like it doesn't really fit after the previous track. It's a very odd piece here. Yeah, that was definitely the weakest up to this point by a decent margin. That song had the least interesting instrumental. Vocals on that track weren't nearly as strong as they have been up to this point on any of the other tracks, and I also just feel like that song, despite its incredibly short length, somehow managed to drag. Like, of all of the songs on this album, I feel like that is one of the ones that should have been like a minute long, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that is my least favorite so far by a decent margin. Not terrible by any means. It's like a low, like a high 5 to like a low 6 for me. Yeah, I just wasn't really crazy on that one. Next up we have Parasite.
Lifting the mask from a local clown, feeling down like him, sailing downstairs to the northern line, watching the shine of the shoes.
Oh my god, flashback. I'm gonna get Genius up again for this one.
For I am the parasite who travels two by two.
Parasite, a very nice bounce back after that previous track. That brought back a lot of the very pretty, beautiful guitar work that I felt like was missing from the previous track. Vocal performance was back into just this really sweet, soothing characteristic that he was putting across on the earlier tracks, and also the lyrical content on that one was very, very strong with him. Again, I don't exactly know what the parasite is, whether it's him or if it's the alcoholism. The way he goes about describing his struggles with it is so interesting on that track. Sort of like telling it like an outsider's perspective in the first verse, and then going into his perspective going forward. Like, in the first verse, he's talking about lifting the mask from a local clown, feeling down like him. And then further on, it moves into first person, where he's talking about seeing the light in a station bar. He's going in and he's like just drinking his problems away. It's the perspective switch is very interesting in the lyrics there. This is one of my favorites up to this point. I think I'd give this one like a 9.6. Incredible bounce back after that previous track, and definitely the most lyrically interesting on the album up to this point, I feel. Next up, we have Free Ride.
Know you, I get to guarding the cattle as they go by the door.
This song seems to be a direct follow-up to the previous track. On the chorus here, he's saying, "But hear me calling when you give me a free ride, hear me calling when you give me a free ride." Basically asking those more fortunate than him for help. And considering the previous track was him, like, I guess, wallowing in his own sorrows, getting lost in alcoholism, this track almost seems like it's a direct follow-up to that, like asking people around him who are in better positions for help. That's interesting. The other thing that's so impressive to me about this is this album is so simple. Basically every single song has just been acoustic guitar and Nick Drake, outside of like a little bit of piano here and there. But it's not gotten stale. And I think that can be attributed to the brevity of the album. At first I was very worried about the very short runtime of this album, and when we got around to like, what was it? Track 3 and track 4, I started to feel like the shorter runtimes of the songs was going to start to be a problem, and that the songs weren't going to have the proper time to be fleshed out. But it really is the brevity and just how to the point this album is that is its strong suit, because I feel like if this thing was like a 40-50 minute album, it would start to get very stale, and I think that the short runtime is very intentional for that specific reason, which I really appreciate. And also, with the exception of No, he knows which tracks to make a little bit longer and which tracks to keep at like the much shorter lengths. Yeah, it would get boring if these songs were longer, exactly. Like, he knows songs like Parasite, Things Behind the Sun, and Free Ride need a little bit longer to be fleshed out. He keeps songs like Pink Moon and Place to Be and Road at a much shorter length, because he knows that if he drags them out any longer, the sound of the album is just going to get stale, you know? But no, this is like literally the perfect length. Literally outside of No, the pacing of this album has been flawless. Like, it doesn't feel like it's gone too fast. It doesn't feel like it's sort of like sprinted through anything. It feels like it's taken just the right amount of time to be perfectly fleshed out on basically every single song up to this point, and I really am super impressed by that. Free Ride, another personal favorite of mine so far. It seems like it's directly following up the last track, like I said, with the lyrical themes, as well as having one of the more interesting instrumentals on the album up to this point. Surprisingly, like, we're like, what, 9 songs in now, and the album's still able to surprise me with how interesting the instrumentals can be when he's using just an acoustic guitar. That one is a 9.3 for me. Track 10, Harvest Breed.
Falling fast and falling free, you look to find a friend and kiss the flowers that bend, and you're ready now.
That was a nice little almost interlude track before the final song. The reason I think this one works a lot better than Horn did is because the song felt a lot more layered and detailed than Horn did, where that one just sort of felt like it was kind of an unnecessary piece. This one feels like it is actually a bridge between the first and final song that I feel like is necessary to have in here. It's not my absolute favorite moment on the album up to this point. Again, I do feel like it doesn't have the same impact that a song like Parasite or Things Behind the Sun does, but still, it's a solid little track to have in here. I'll give this one an 8.5. Final song from the morning.
Day 1 stone from the ground, the endless colored waste. Go play the game, and now we rise. We are everywhere. Go play the game that you like.
Surprisingly very sweet way to close the album off. After we had a string of tracks that felt very... that were a lot more pessimistic about him falling into alcoholism, and then that being followed up by begging people for help, and then the interlude track almost describing him falling further and further into this. The song ends on a much more optimistic note, with it saying, like, a day once dawned, it was beautiful. It's talking about, now we rise, we're everywhere, we're rising up from the ground. And then it's talking about, go play the game that you learned from the morning. Maybe it's talking about learning from, I guess, the mistakes that he's made up to this point. Sort of using it as an excuse to better himself on this new day that he's describing here. It's a very interesting way to close this. Surprisingly optimistic, and not the ending I expected at all, considering the previous 3 tracks, but I'm honestly very satisfied with it. I would give this song, I think, a flat 9. I think I give that closer to like a 9.5 now. This is really a fantastic closer that only grows every time I re-listen to it. That was Pink Moon by Nick Drake. My final review here kind of stinks, so I'm just gonna give some updated thoughts after my re-listens of the album. This is one of the prettiest folk albums that you can listen to. It is so brief and so simple, but it finds immense strength in that brevity and simplicity, as it's able to focus more on painting very specific, emotionally impactful pictures rather than having a lot of moving parts that create big, complex layers of tracks, if that makes sense. The lyrical themes on this album are fantastic, as we see Nick Drake so eloquently describing falling into this deep pit of regret and self-loathing as he is struggling with alcoholism, as he is trying to find help to get out of the struggle that he is in. And I think that the very optimistic note that the album ends off on is amazing. I love that the album ends on a moment of hope and him moving forward and using the mistakes that he has made to learn and better himself. It is just an incredible way of closing the album off. Sure, there are 1 or 2 tracks in here that feel a little unnecessary, and there are a couple moments that I feel like could have been explored maybe a little deeper, but all in all, this is just an absolutely fantastic experience of an album with such a gorgeous sound palette that I legit cannot understate how amazing this album sounds. So, yeah, I would feel wrong giving this any less than a 9. This album's like a flat 9. It is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think of this album down below. Do you love it? Do you think it's overrated? Do you think it's one of Nick Drake's best or one of his absolute worst? Let me know what other albums you'd like me to listen to in the future down below as well. Make sure you subscribe. We're on our way to 2K. Links in the description to my Discord, my Twitter, my album of the year, and my second channel. Check those out if you haven't. Again, subscribe, do it, or I will find you. And yeah. I will see you guys whenever our next stream or upload. Next video is going to be Mezzanine. That's going to be a big reaction, so make sure you stick around for that. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.